So here on the channel I've reviewed all kinds of different products, and the Phoenix one was one very interesting one. And unfortunate where this thing has a lot of power on the inside and also was called the Nvidia Shield Killer. It came with a lot of problems. But still, how is it today? And is it still worth picking up? Yeah, so when it comes to the overall price point, this thing was completely overpriced. So what made the Phoenix one so unique? It's not because of the firmware that was on this, because that was more of an like say problematic situation. So inside we're having a Snapdragon. So Snapdragon is absolutely an amazing chip. But the thing is, with the Snapdragon in phones, all kinds of different, let's say, applications, we didn't see it a lot when it comes to Android boxes. And this was one of those cool things that you had in this device. But let's take a close look at the remote itself. It's a basic remote with no Netflix or Amazon whatever options, because most of these features are not enabled on the box itself. We have a navigation and selection on and off, return home, and a volume, and even a mouse button. That is quite unique, by the way. More like thinking that this is an air remote. It's similar to, let's say, the remote way how it looks of the Nvidia Shield, the first generation 500GB Pro, but it's not the same quality because this thing is fully made out of plastic. The manual is complete in Chinese, but it also have like not a lot of information. And underneath we're finding the power supply and a very nice looking high HDMI cable. Man, this is a thick one, absolutely. The power supply, that is quite interesting also. So 5V 3 amps. So it's not like the 90 volts weirdness that we're having with the Nvidia Shield. And underneath we're finding the base where we can put the device in. But that's it, that's the only thing what you're getting inside the package. So the way how this thing looks and how it feels, it also feels quite heavy. And I think it's one of those cool features with the logo and the way how this thing just looks. At the back we're finding even more connection, but I found it, let's say, limitations. What do I mean with limitations? We don't have a lot of USB ports, only 3.0 and the 2.0, RJ45, the input for the power supply and output for the HDMI. At the front we do have the intake for the fan and also at the top, but we don't have a lot of, let's say, USB ports. So that's a very big, a huge limitation. But let's touch that about the software itself. So like with the first generation of the Nvidia Shield, the Phoenix one also comes with a controller. It looks very familiar. It looks almost the same like an Xbox One controller. And I can tell you that the overall, let's say, triggers and everything feels quite nice. The analog sticks, but also when it comes to the D-pad. And I'm quite surprised how overall good it feels. But this Phoenix controller is specially made for the Phoenix one, the console itself or the Android box. We have a micro USB that we're needing for charging it and connecting it. But actually when you're going to be plugging this thing in for the first time, it will automatically configure so far I understand. And you can also navigate through the menu because we have this special button that we can change it out to a controller, but also as a normal mouse or navigation controller. So quite a lot of options when it comes to that. I've been also messing around with different controller configurations like the BitTop, but also when it comes to the Xbox 360. And I can tell you that, yeah, the compatibility with a lot of the controllers is problematic. So I was really forced to use the Phoenix controller. Kind of a little bit of a bummer in my opinion, because that's one of those, let's say, things, a lot of problems that were faced when using the Phoenix One. For such an expensive product, it comes with a lot of problems and limitations. So we're going to be mostly using the Phoenix controller in this video. We're going to get with the interface. First of all, I think it looks really nice and smooth, but it is not like the Nvidia Shield. We don't have all the applications, and it also includes when it comes to the Play Store. When you want to boot something up, you will get the message that you need to have a connection. And even if you have going to be in connection setup, I tried it with different boxes, it doesn't work at all, because this is clearly made for Asian market. So when it comes to gaming and all the features, it's a little bit of a messy stuff, especially when you're looking at the menu and all the stuff you see. Most of the things doesn't even boot up when you're having internet. Then we're having like the option to install yourself some APK files. Also here I noticed some issues, like some of the game emulators doesn't even boot up. But I got a lot of them working, so we could do some testing here on the channel. Alright, so let's check the specifications with AIDA64. So first of all, the model is Phoenix One. What I do like about it, we're going to get 4GB of RAM in this device. And we're having a lot of internal storage total space. But it's a really old product, so that explains why we don't have 64 gigabytes, something like that. The Qualcomm Snapdragon 660 is quite a beefy CPU, and that makes this thing just really cool when it comes to gaming. And for the GPU, we're going to get ourselves an Adreno 512. So in overall, this device, in my opinion, has quite some beefy specifications. Let's check the Android, and we're going to get Android 8.1.0 called Oreo. Alright guys, next up PlayStation 1. But what I did change today is that we're going to have a higher internal resolution. And the reason is just simple. With the normal resolution it runs just fine. Nowadays on Android boxes with lesser power we can run this. But I was thinking, what should we do when we're having like a beefcake of a system like this? Let's push it a little bit further. And you can see that it doesn't hit the 60 FPS. That's a little bit of a bummer in my opinion. And that is something we need to take into consideration when you're having a system like this. So I wanted to try out two games. In this case, we're going to try out the first game. And you can see like when it's in game, we don't hit the 60 FPS. Of course, with a loading screen we hit it, but that is more cheating. But let's try another game. Let's try R-Type Delta and shmup that is less demanding. Because you will see almost the same result. 56, 57 FPS. But when you're going to play, you will see that we're hitting the 60 FPS and having the full gameplay on this game. But when you're looking at the game as this, you can see that now it runs 60 FPS, 59, but I think it's just stable enough to enjoy this game. Having it 2 times the internal resolution, it looks amazing on this Phoenix One. And you can see like where a lot of these other Android devices struggle getting this PlayStation 1 lifted up to a high resolution. This Phoenix One has no problem whatsoever. So PlayStation 1 runs even with the 2 times resolution with some games. Okay, next up, Sega Dreamcast with the Redream emulator with a resolution of 640 by 480. And the reason I wanted to do it like this is just to see if we can run this game perfectly. And 60 FPS locked stable. Of course, take into consideration that even the Redream emulator has some games that are not compatible, but in the future they will highly possible fix this all. But like this game runs perfectly and we can play it on full speed on the Phoenix One without a hassle. Okay, so for the final test I wanted to test out PlayStation Portable with the PPSSPP emulator. And this device runs the PlayStation emulator quite well. So when it comes to Tekken, you can see this game runs on full 60 FPS. There is no frame skipping, no other tweaks, it's just set to the basic settings. And I must say that I was surprised to see that this piece of hardware can run one of my favorite games perfectly. I'm always trying Tekken 6, the reason because it's just my casual go-to game to play but also to test on these systems. And I noticed when you're looking at the low-end emulators, they all struggle with PSP in general. And with a beefy Phoenix One, with this Snapdragon 660, there is no problem whatsoever. So in the next test, we're going to try out Wipeout. For me, it's like the next level. If Tekken 6 runs fine, with Wipeout, we're going to need some more power. So it's going to be the best test. Running now on 60 FPS stable. But when you can get an explosion, you can see it dips down for a couple of seconds. In my opinion, it's not a big of a deal, but I just wanted to show you that Wipeout doesn't run on 60 FPS stable when you're going to push it. Especially when it comes to explosion and stuff going on. But overall, it got quite some good performance. Something you don't see on cheap boxes. But with GameCube, I think we're like already done with testing. So I tried Crash Bandicoot, a lot of different games, but only it seems to be like some of the first generation games that I've shown you before will work fine. But like this is not running at all, or should be. We're going to get this purple display every single time it's booting up. This part is not really demanding. You can see the FPS rises up to the 60. But when we're going to play the game, you can see it doesn't even hit the 30 FPS. And that makes this game just freaking slow and unplayable. And I noticed this of course with a more demanding game too, like F-Zero GX. That game was not even playable at all with 15 FPS. So when it comes to the GameCube, sadly this device is not powerful enough. The final test for PlayStation Portable and this box, of course, the God of War game on PlayStation Portable. And surprisingly, this game runs very good, but not perfect. You can already see that it's dipping down to the 50, and we're going to start playing, we see even dips up to the 40. And that is a little bit of a bummer, so you can see that this box is not powerful enough to run God of War on full speed. So in the next step I wanted to add frame skipping to see if we're going to get some better performance. But when we are going to apply the frame skip on God of War, you're going to see that we're going to get a stable 30 FPS and makes this game, in my opinion, playable. So this is what you're going to get with the Phoenix One. For when it comes to the performance, PlayStation Portable is just still a mixed bag. It's just a little bit of a bummer. I wish we could play this game at least at the full speed. But yeah, when you're looking at the older games like GameCube and the really high demanding stuff, it still struggles with the tiny box when a Snapdragon 660.